Hi guys, my name is Zen. I am a player and mapper for Beat Saber. Currently, within the past few months I'd say, I've been around on Twitch in the Beat Saber community. I've seen a lot of people showing interest in mapping, but they aren't quite sure how to get into it. So I want to go over an in-depth guide of how to get into mapping, how to avoid beginner mistakes that most people usually do on their first couple of maps, and try to get people set up and ready to get the maps out that they want to play or that they want to put into the game for different songs. I'm going to add a disclaimer now that I am by no means considering myself to be a good mapper. I learn new things every time I open the mapper, and I'm sure most mappers also do, such as maybe a pattern variation. I discover a button that does something I didn't know it did it before. So if I don't cover something in this guide that maybe you know about that I don't, or you find that I didn't know about, I'll apologize in advance, but I'm going to try my best to help you guys out to get started on your journey into mapping for Beat Saber. So let's get started. So I have a list here of a few things you might want to get before you consider mapping. You're going to want something called 7-zip, WinZip, or WinRAR. Personally, I use 7-zip. I find it the easiest to get. Everything in this list, by the way, is completely free, so don't worry, except for Chroma, but we'll get to that. You're going to need an application called Audacity. We'll use this here in a little bit to set a few things up in our song to make it a little easier to map. You're going to want to join the BSMG Discord, as the link to download Mediocre Mapper Assistant 2 is currently down, and there is a temporary link in the mapping discussion channel in that Discord server that will take you to where you need to go. You're going to, of course, need a mapper. You're going to probably be using either Mediocre Mapper Assistant 2 or Chroma. I would like to note that Chroma, you either have to apply and be granted access to use it, or you have to pay at least $5 a month to the creator's Patreon. Mostly Chroma, I would say, is used more for wall mapping, since it supports something called noodle extensions, but we're probably not going to cover noodle extensions today. That's more of an advanced mapping technique that more advanced mappers would use that are more familiar with mapping. They've made a few maps now, they want to diverse into something else. I will never recommend the mapper in game. It is literally garbage. Don't use it. Trust me, you'll save yourself a headache. We're going to focus on Mediocre Mapper Assistant 2. You're going to want to have the file of the song you are trying to map. Preferably use a FLAC. It will make something called waveform, which we will discuss once we get into the mapper, a little easier to read and work with. You're going to need to be able to take constructive criticism, as people will be playing your map once you upload it. They will judge it, they will leave positive feedback, negative feedback, whether it's good, bad, has something called good flow, bad flow, whether the patterns are okay, whether you smash your controllers together, which we'll discuss that as well. And of course, you're going to need patience. When you first get into mapping, mapping takes time. Yes, there are mappers out there that can do a map in an hour, 2 hours. My first map personally took me 15 hours. It does not exist anymore. I wish I had a few tips along the way when I started mapping my first map, so I'm here to try to help you guys not make the same mistakes I did. If your first map takes you 15 hours, if it takes you 50 hours, don't worry. Practice, practice, practice. You will get better. I also recommend downloading a program called Aerovortex. This will help you find things such as the BPM of the song if you're not able to find it on Google. Personally, I rely more on Aerovortex because Google has proven wrong in the past when trying to find a BPM. I've, for example, had a song, I googled it, it said the song was 130 BPM. It was actually like 131.6. Also, join the Score Saber Discord. There's a ton of high-level players and mappers in there that would be more than happy to help you, because I'm sure, just like myself, they also want good, fun maps to play that play well, and we're always looking for new mappers. I will leave a link to all of the downloads that you're going to need in the description, but mostly I'm going to focus on where to get Mediocre Mapper Assistant 2. You're going to go into the BSMG Discord. You're going to go to the pinned comments. and it's going to give you this link. Of course, the link when you Google Mediocre Mapper Assistant 2 will eventually get fixed, so you won't have to use this, but for now this is kind of what we have to work with. So let's assume you've already downloaded 7-Zip, Audacity, Aerovortex, all that stuff. You can Google that stuff. It's pretty easy to find. It's usually the first thing that pops up. What we're going to do is once we get to this link, we're going to click on MMA2.zip. It will give you a file down here, and you'll be able to open this in your downloads. You'll be able to unzip it. You'll be able to extract all the files, and you'll be able to finally open your mapper. Now, when you first get your mapper, it's going to look like this, and I'm going to make this big actually. So what this is asking for is the path for the mapper to read where you're pulling your levels from. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to go find your Beat Saber folder. Personally, mine is in my Steam folder. You're going to go to Beat Saber data. You're going to, for custom levels, you're going to click properties. Your location is right here. Go ahead and highlight this. If I can highlight this C. We're going to Control C to copy it. We're going to paste it right there. We're going to make sure we grab the whole link. Trust me, it's very important that you do that, or else it's going to mess up. Or you can just do this. Copy address, paste, and we're going to do the same for our work in progress folder. We're going to copy address, we're going to paste, and we're going to click apply. Now the next thing I would do, you're going to have blank folders. Eventually they'll pop up. They do pop up if you have songs like I do, but your folders will be blank for the most part. I'm going to actually close and reopen my mapper to show you what it looks like with maps actually put into the mapper. So I now have a list of maps. These are all of my WIPs that I've either made myself or received from people to look at in my mapper or playtest in game, and look at the mapper to see if I can make any changes. So let's show you what all these buttons do. Open last will open the last map you were working on. I was working on beta, so it opened beta. We'll get to all this stuff in a second. We'll get to all this stuff in a second. If you refresh the song list, of course, it will refresh all of your songs. WIP songs will pull the songs that you have in your WIP folder. Custom songs will pull the songs that you have in all of your custom folder. This is basically every map I have downloaded in my game that isn't a WIP that I got off of Beat Saber. Multi-mapper, you can set up a server to make multiple people able to work on the same map at the same time. This isn't really commonly used anymore. It used to be, but it probably still is here and there. I wouldn't focus too much on this because you'll probably not use this too often. And then the temp loader, you can go to beatsaber.com. You can pull an ID off of a map. Say you want to look at a pattern, how it's mapped. You'll go to Beat Saber, find a key. I will put in one of my own map keys here. I'll open it. It'll think for a second. It'll download the file. You can see all the info of the map. You can edit it. And now I'm in the map. I can see everything that was mapped in the map. This is basically I wouldn't say it's a read-only file because you can place blocks, but if you're interested in looking at maybe patterns from a map that somebody uploaded to Beat Saber, you can use that to check it. Over here on the right, we have our autosave. Make sure this is checked. This is super important. This makes sure that your map autosaves while you're mapping. You're going to want this just in case the mapper maybe crashes or something. But we're also going to have a failsafe if this doesn't work, because sometimes the mapper will crash and it doesn't autosave even though it says it does. Autosave interval in seconds. This is set to 300 seconds at the moment, which is every 5 minutes. This means the map will autosave every 5 minutes. You can set this to whatever you want. I usually leave it at 300. You could set it to 120 or something so it saves every 2 minutes. That's personally up to you. Autosave while playing. You can leave this checked if you want. Basically, while you're playing the map back in the mapper, this will make it so it autosaves while you are looking at the map being played in front of you. lights, no lighting, I would leave this unchecked because you'll probably want to do lights on your map. Zip folder, you can create a folder, say on your desktop, and put the path in here, and anytime you are in a map and you click this fancy little button, it will package those songs into a zip folder in that specific folder you path to. I would not worry about these at the moment because they are more advanced mapping techniques. Maybe we'll go into those in a future video. Chroma Toggle, this is for lights if you want to make chroma lights, such as something different than red and blue. Maybe you want to put yellow or green lights into your map. You can use this. I always have it checked because I light in chroma. And then of course you have your files that have all your songs. If you click this, it'll give you the first screen that I showed you when you download the mapper, and it'll ask you to put your paths. Don't click this button. It will break your mapper. So before we even begin mapping, what we're going to do is, you should have Audacity downloaded at this point. Now this is where the FLAC comes into play. You're going to need that as well. We're going to open Audacity. Let me go grab it really quick here. So Audacity looks like this. This is a very useful tool for us as mappers. What we're going to do, I'm actually not going to use a FLAC for this case. I'm going to use an MP3 because I couldn't find a good FLAC for this song, but that's okay. This is probably the FLAC I would normally use, but I don't want to get copyrighted. So we're going to open our MP3 file here, just pretend it's a FLAC. We're not going to touch anything except for 4 buttons in this case. We're going to go to generate, we're going to go to silence, and we're going to add up to 2 seconds. You can do 1 second, you can do 1.5 seconds. Do not leave this at 0, because if the song starts at 0 seconds, the player of your map will suddenly be barraged with notes as soon as they open the song. In my case, my game lags sometimes, so it's impossible to hit those notes. Do not do for more than 2 seconds because you don't want to spend an eternity waiting for the notes to come at you. 2 seconds I found is a good time frame because it's not only the max, but it gives the player enough time to prepare for what's going to come at them. We'll go ahead and click OK. We're going to come up here to File, Export as OGG. We're going to come over here to our Beat Saber folder. We're going to go to our WIP folder. I made a folder previously called Tutorial Song. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. We're going to save this as song. This will save us a bunch of time in the future, so go ahead and save it as song. You'll get a menu that pops up that looks like this. Go ahead and click OK. It will transform it to an OGG file. We'll close out of this. You can go ahead and hit no. We're probably not going to use that file for anything else. And then we can come on over to our mapper. Now, you're going to scroll down. You might have to click refresh. If you have to, don't worry about it. The song will pop up. We're looking for something called Tutorial Song because that's the folder that we put our song in. And we have this fancy little menu. So I was working on something a little bit ago. Let me reset everything. So when you first open your song folder, it will look like this. Now this is where we are going to use Aerovortex. So the song that we are currently using, let me go see if I can find the name of it. The song name is called Living with Regret. The artist of the song, you can use a subname if it's like you're mapping an anime opening. Call it TV size if you want to, it's up to you. But this is a NCS release song, so the artist of the song is Roy Knox. And Shia Micel. The mapper, you'll go ahead and put your mapper name. Mine in this case is Zenzoto. The BPM, now this is where Aerovortex will come into play. You can Google this if you want, but sometimes you can't find a BPM of a song if you Google it, especially if it's not a very common song. So this is the case where we use Aerovortex. So Aerovortex looks like this. It's nothing fancy. It's just a very useful tool that we use for rhythm games to help us find BPMs, offsets, etc. For this case, we're going to use the tool to find the BPM because we'll find the offset in the mapper itself. So we're going to go to Open. We're going to go to the folder that we are using to map our song. We're going to go to our song. We're going to click Tempo and adjust sync. And then we're going to click Find BPM. So it's telling us that this song is 150 BPM or 100 BPM. I'm going to go with 150 because it estimates at a 72% assurance rate that it's 150. So we're going to plug 150 into here. Alright. Audio name, of course, is song.og. Preview start time. What this does is it measures the time in seconds, how long the song goes. When the player selects the song in their song menu in game, it's going to preview what the song sounds like starting at 12 seconds. You can change this, you can leave it the same. For now, we're going to leave it the same. This measures how long the preview is going to play for. In this case, it's going to play for 10 seconds. This is going to be cover.jpg. We're not going to touch this at all. It's telling me it's wrong because I had settings set up a little bit ago. Default environment, we're going to leave that alone. You can change it to force the game to make you play in a specific environment. For now, I'm going to leave default environment. That also makes it so people can play in whatever environment they want. You can use a custom platform if you want. You can go download these off of any platform website, Model Saber, etc., whatever you feel like. So now we're going to click Add Difficulty. It gave us a difficulty here. However, the difficulty is still none, so we're going to have to set that. For now, let's map an expert song. Characteristic is what kind of map you want to make it. If you want to make it a regular map, you're going to use standard. If you want to make it a Mall Saber map, you can click no arrows. If you want to make it a one saber map where you use only your left or right hand, you can make it a single saber map. We're going to leave it as standard. Difficulty label, you can put whatever you want in here. What this basically does is it changes the name of the difficulty in the game from whatever difficulty it is to whatever you put in here. Like, for example, one of my maps I named the difficulty label Lunatic, so in game it shows the difficulty instead of Extra Plus as Lunatic. Offset, we'll get into this in a second. Note jump speed and spawn distance, we'll get into those in a second as well. So we're going to click Apply. That will change all of our settings to what we set them to, and we'll go into Edit Level. Let me delete all of this stuff real quick as I was working on something a little bit ago with this. So, one nice thing you can do is hold down your right click and you can use your WASD to move up and down. You can use space to move directly up, control to move directly down. We're going to come over here and delete this stuff really quick. And then you can press backspace to put your camera exactly where it was. Now, the first thing I recommend you do as soon as you get into your mapper is find the offset. So typically the song starts with the waveform where the white part of the waveform starts. That is where the first note of the song typically begins. We're going to find the closest beat note. In this case, I'm going to actually press escape. I'm going to change my editor scale to 600. This will make finding where you need to get to change your map to line it up properly with the time a little bit easier, but the closest beat to this waveform is 5. So what I'm going to actually do, these numbers down here, you can press X to switch them. Basically this allows you to have two different timings with how you scroll. At the moment I'm set at 1, so it will go 5, 6, 7. If I set it to 2, it'll go 5 to 5.5, then 6 to 6.5 to 7. So what we want to do actually is set this to 64 at the moment because that is the most precise measurement that Mediocre Mapper Assistant 2 lets you use. We're going to try to line up this white portion of the waveform as close to beat 5 as we can. So we're going to scroll, 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 scroll until we line up with it. It looks like it is at about 100 milliseconds. So we're going to pay close attention to this number up here in the top right, this 100 here. We're going to scroll back to beat 5, and it is at 0. So we need to set that offset number to 100. Now we want to pull the map towards us, which is basically pulling the song back to line up. So we're going to set the offset to negative. If we wanted to push it forward, say to beat 6, we would set it to positive. Luckily, we are working with a 150 BPM song, so that makes it very easy because everything is in intervals of 100. But normally this is not as easy as that. So we're going to make this negative 100. So if we go back into our map now, and we will switch this back to 1 to go a little bit faster here. So now we are at beat 5. Oh, I think I messed it up. Hold on. I did indeed mess it up. So we need to go positive 100. That's my fault. See, rookie mistakes, it happens. But anyways, now the beginning of the waveform lines up with beat 5. So if we click play, the song begins at 5. Now to double check this, if you really want to, you can place a note on each beat line to see if the beat lines up. And if you really want to get precise, you can come into the playback speed. You can change it to 0.7, 0.3, however slow you feel like listening to it. And we can now go click play. And it lines up. So that's a good offset. Offset will save you a ton of headaches in the future because you'll want your map to line up with the beats. That way you're not trying to map in between beat lines. The next thing we're gonna want to do with this map is discuss what all these buttons do. So, red obviously places a red note, blue places a blue note, bomb, we have walls, and then we have the trash can, which when you click on anything deletes said note. So if we want to map something here, let's see here. So let's go ahead and change this back to 1 now that we found our offset and got it spot on here. So yeah, now the map lines up a little bit with the beat here, as you can hear with the clicks. To enable this, all you're going to do is go here to note sound, click tick, hit volume, turn this up. Usually I like to have my music volume a little bit lower, that way I can hear the tick over the music. But the next thing we can now work on is deciding what sounds we want to map. Now, what mappers usually do for this is they time their maps using dot notes. How did I get a dot note? Well, if you use your keypad and you press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, diagonal, 2, down, 3, diagonal, 4, sideways, 5 is a dot, 6 is also sideways the other direction, and then 7, 8, and 9 are your up notes. In other terms, other shortcuts, if you use your regular 1, you'll get a red note, 2 will be a blue, 3 will be a bomb, 4 will be a wall, 5 will be the trash can. Usually, at the start of a map, I would always want to start a down note. There are very few exceptions to this, but usually you always want to start on a down note because up notes are really sudden to start on a map, and most players don't expect a map to start on an up note. So now what we're going to do is we're going to listen to the song for a bit to decide what sound do we want to map to. So let's give it a listen here for a second. So in this case, I think I want to map to the drum. So another nice thing about waveform is you see these spikes here. Those are usually typically what are going to be drum hits. So I know here this is going to be the next drum hit. So if I were to place a down note here, I got the bass and the snare. And then I could place another note here if I wanted to. And then another note here. And then there's a rise here. We could place that as well. And let's listen back to it and see how it sounds. Now the waveform is useful, but you can't always rely on it. As you just heard, there's an extra note in there that's not mapped to anything. That'll be this down blue. We can just remove this and we can put the down blue here on the next drum hit. Now this is a very basic pattern variation. If you really wanted to, if you really felt like it, you could come here and say, raise these notes to the top line. It's really up to you. You can do all sorts of things with the mapper. You can make all sorts of patterns. Don't be afraid to experiment with patterns either. So let's say I want to do something like, let's do something crazy here. Put a note here. We can leave that note there, and we can leave that note there. So now we have a little bit of pattern variation. Always make sure to save your map, by the way, because if the mapper crashes, autosave won't always save you. It'll actually sometimes delete your progress. There have been so many times where I've had 40+ minutes of work, I copy and pasted a note or something, my mapper popped up with that evil fatal error message, all of my work was gone. It was very unfortunate. So while we're on the topic of pattern variation, what are some good patterns and what are some bad patterns? So one of the most important things besides timing in a map is flow. What does flow mean? Basically, a map that flows well means that it plays in a way that is not uncomfortable to swing at the blocks. An example of good flow, if I start with this down note, I can move one of 3 ways to have good flow. I can move this way, I can move directly up, I can move diagonally. Examples of bad flow would be 2 double directionals in a row. This is called a reset. These are also resets. And a 90 degree typically does not flow well. There are very few exceptions. There are also very few exceptions to when a reset is okay, such as using something like bombs to make the player move their sabers up to avoid them. Then you can set a reset. However, that's a more advanced mapping technique. I don't necessarily recommend trying that until you get more used to mapping, but it is an available option for you if you want. Flow is definitely very important, definitely something I would learn as quickly as you possibly can, but sometimes flow does not always work out, such as if I'm going to make a scissor, which is a double with the notes spawning in the opposite direction of each other. So this would flow okay, however, something like, let's say we started with something like this. Now that's potential to make our arms crisscross, and that's not very fun. You have to be very careful with sideways notes. In my opinion, they're some of the hardest notes to map, but it's really up to you. Everyone has their different mapping styles. Another thing I would try to avoid is something called a triangle. I mapped this wrong. So this is what's known as a triangle. Basically, it makes you rotate your wrist in what feels like a triangle pattern. It's super uncomfy. This is more commonly used in jumps. Try to avoid that as well. So now that we've kind of explained the basics of mapping, different patterns, what might be good, what might be bad, we got all of our offset and timing set up correctly, let's go talk about note jump speed. Note jump speed is the speed that the notes come at the player. 12 NJS as it's set at right now, because that is the default NJS that the mapper sets it at, is very, very slow. Normally we would want to speed this up, so we'll make it a higher note jump speed. Typically with note jump speed we want the jump distance between 30 and 35. At the moment it's set to 19. So let's put in a random value like, let's try 20. Perfect. 32. Let's try 18. 28.8. So it's a little below 30. So what we can do is come over to the spawn distance modifier, which affects how close to the player the blocks spawn, whether they spawn further away, which would be a positive integer, or closer, which would be negative. Let's try 0.1. That made it higher, so 0.1 would be good. If I put negative 0.1, it makes it lower. So for this case, I like 20. 20 is a comfy NJS. We're going to leave this at 0 and switch it to 20. We now have a pretty good note jump speed. It will play really comfy according to the mapper. However, you can go into the game after you've mapped it for a bit and play test it. It may not play as comfy as the mapper says. Sometimes the mapper does lie. Let's go on to lights. So if you hold down your right mouse button and come over to the right here with your D key, you'll see this little panel here. This is the light panel. If you hit the tab button, you will unlock the light menu. So basically, let's raise it here so we can see what each thing does. So we have our back top lasers, which is the giant X. We have our track ring neons, which are the lights on the rings. We have our left lasers, which are the left side lasers. We have our right lasers, which are the right side lasers. We have our bottom backside lasers, which are the track lasers. We have ring rotation, which makes the bigger rings rotate. We have the small ring zoom, which makes the small ring rotate in the middle a little bit more. We have laser speed, which if we come down here, at the moment they're stagnant, but if we come down here and set it to something like 3, they now rotate. And over here is a BPM change. So say a song changes BPM in the middle, such as one I can think of, one of my maps called Toho Mathematics. It's a 150 BPM song, but in the middle of the song it changes to 130, then 110, then back to 150. We can use this to change the BPM of the song to make the timing line up the way it should. However, we're going to leave this alone because this entire song is 150 all the way through. So if I were to map some lights here, let's set a red light here, red light here, a blue light here, a blue light here, a red light here. That makes all the lights light up. Fantastic. So we're going to control click again, delete, and that'll get rid of everything. So what do these do? This is an on block, so this will leave it permanently on. This is a flash block, which will make it flash on. This is a fade block, which will make it on suddenly and then fade away. And the last one is a off block, which will make the block turn off as soon as it hits the off. So it's just suddenly off. Lights are very tedious, I will say, but they are fun. If you really do not want to do your own lights, you can do Shift Tab. Now while I'm here, I'll go over this menu as well. There's the stat panel, which tells you all of the info about your map, how many notes you've made, how many notes a second it is, basically how many notes the player is swinging at per second on average, how many bombs you've put. The creator of this mapper hates bombs. Walls, how many walls you put in your map. I don't like walls, I typically don't map them. How many lighting events, so basically if I put lights down, we now have 4 lighting events. Red to blue ratio of your blocks, basically how many red blocks versus how many blue blocks you placed. You want to try to keep this around 1 as much as possible at the beginning, but later on maybe your ratio might be 0.85. That means you just have more blue blocks than red blocks. Vision blocks, we definitely want to avoid these. So what a vision block is, Let me come over here back to this, and I'll press tab. So basically, these two middle little boxes here are the most guilty of causing vision blocks. So if I were to place a block right here, smack dab, right side middle, I now have vision blocked everything on the right side of the mapper for probably a beat and a half or two. So basically, when the player is in the song trying to swing at the blocks, this block blocks them from being able to see what's coming at them on the right side. Same thing with the left side, they can no longer see what's coming at them on the left side. Walls are also very bad about this, so if I place a wall here and then I place a note immediately after, this wall suddenly blocks that note from being able to be seen. Same thing with bombs. Bombs, if they're very dense, will also vision block. That is not a good thing. We like to avoid as much vision block as possible. Of course, as the mapper says, 0% is by far the best. Highly aggressive vision block, so basically if I put a bunch of blocks in the middle, it'll tell me, wow, there's a lot of vision blocks. We like to keep that at 0% as well. Top notes, basically how many notes are in your top row. Middle notes, middle row. Bottom notes, bottom row. Light mapper, if you click this button, you can adjust some of these settings. I'm just going to leave them alone for now, just to show you kind of what it does. Now I have some lights on my map. If I press Control Z, it'll undo everything I just did. That's an easy way to get rid of what you were trying to do. Min time is basically the minimum amount of time it will detect blocks if you click one of these buttons. Same with maximum time, so it'll detect every fourth beat from where I'm at the moment, or up to every 3/4 beat. So basically 1, 2, 3, or rather 1, 2, 3. I typically like to change this to 1,000. That way it detects every block that is a problem within 1,000. You can check for double same directions. So like we said before, this is a double directional. We like to avoid those. We can check for vision blocks. That is considered a vision block, and we can check for stack notes. So this usually happens when you copy and paste notes, but sometimes you can map in like maybe 1/64th. It's not telling me there's a stack note, but normally that's what happens when you copy paste notes. We like to try to avoid copy pasting as much as possible. However, some sections and songs get really repetitive, and sometimes mappers don't have a choice but to, for consistency reasons, just copy paste what they're mapping. You can clear the errors, like for instance, if I were to have a double direction, it's not counting that because we're still in 1/64th. If I were to have a double direction, like for here, if I click clear, it'll get rid of the red, but we normally don't use that button because we like to see where our errors are. We can just click Shift Tab to get out of this menu. We can click Close to get out of that. That is basically the basics of mapping. So let's assume for a second here that your map's all done and you have all your lights done and you're ready for upload, but you see all these light mappers that are like, oh, their maps are rainbow. So one of two things is going on here. They either have the Rainbow Lights mod installed in their game, or they're using something called Chroma. We can do Chroma in the mapper itself, which is super fun. I love lighting in Chroma. Or the Rainbow mod in the game is, of course, available to everyone with a mod assistant. You can just find it in the mod assistant and feel free to use it. It'll change all your lights to rainbow. However, I like making my lights specific color instead of relying on rainbow lights. So basically how we do this here is we are going to say place a block right here. For Chroma, typically I like to map in 1/32 because that makes it a little easier to place note blocks. And we're going to click this arrow. So what does this do? This pulls up a Chroma menu of data blocks. So if I were to click, say, purple and put a purple block right there, my lights now pop up purple. And if I were to, say, put them as blue, it now makes it cyan colored. And every single block I map after this will also be the same color. But what I can do is I can, say, place a green block, and it will once again change the color of the lights. You can do some pretty cool effects with that. It's really up to you. Everyone chroma lights differently. A lot of people use Light Mapper. There's no shame in doing it. Don't feel bad if you don't like to do lights. It takes honestly more time than actually mapping the song itself. But let's assume here now that my map is finished. Everything is mapped. We're going to save map. Remember to always save, save, save. I would say save every time it says autosave just to make sure nothing happens. Now we're coming back to this menu. So one thing we need before we are ready is we need a cover art, which is this little thing here. So what we're going to do to find this is you can Google for the image. In this case, I would probably find NCS Release, one of their cover arts for the song, because it is an NCS Release song. We're going to come over here to our Beat Saber folder. We're going to go find where our WIP folder is, which is in here. We're going to find the image that we want. We're going to put it in this file. Make sure if it is not a JPEG, if it is a PNG, like it is in this little file here, you change this over here to .png. It'll work just fine. JPEGs or PNGs work fine. They both upload to Beat Saber the same way. Make sure it is lowercase or else the mapper gets mad at you because it is case sensitive. And now we are good to go. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to click package song to zip. It will package the song to a zip folder automatically in the WIP folder that we are using for our tutorial song, unless you specified back here where you wanted it to zip folders to. So your map is finally done. You're ready to upload it. Before I would upload it, if you think it's completely done, it might not be. Go get it play tested in either the Score Saber Discord, the BSMG Discord, or go try to find a Twitch streamer in the Beat Saber category that's willing to do playtests. Most of them are. I haven't really come across any that don't. If they do, it's usually very rare. Get your map playtested. They will give you positive or negative feedback and tell you what you need to change. It's definitely smart to do this. That way you don't upload your map, find there's something wrong with it a day later, have to delete it off of Beat Saber, and then re-upload it again. It just saves you a little bit of time and headache. It saves the players a little bit of time and headache. It saves you from receiving negative feedback that was unnecessary in the first place. Get your maps play tested. That's definitely the last most important thing you should do before you upload your map. But let's assume you finally got your map play tested. Everyone said it looks good. Everyone you sent it to said it looks good. You can even send it to other mappers. They can open it in the mapper. Most mappers that are experienced can just look at the mapper and be like, okay, this is wrong, this is right. You can gain that with experience as well as you keep practicing. But we're going to assume in this case that you are completely done with your map. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a fancy website called beatsaber.com where we store all of our files for maps. We're going to either create an account or log in if you have one already, and we're going to click the upload button. We're going to type the title of our song, which is in this case Living with Regret. We're going to put in the beat map description. You can put whatever you want in there. You can put map by you, or I spent this long on this map. You can put the NJS info, which is the note jump speed, and then you're going to click choose a file, which normally the last file you had open is what pops up, and then normally this is where I would click upload. Now I'm not going to because this file has literally nothing in it. You don't want to upload WIPs to Beat Saber. Everyone will get mad at you. They will download it very quickly. It will never get played anywhere because it's a WIP, it's not complete. They get very mad. Sometimes they get removed. But at this point, if my map was done, ready to go, been play tested, everything, I would click upload and it would be available to be downloaded into your game with this key right here for the Beat Saber request command that most streamers have, or you can go search it in the More Songs mod in your own game and use this key as well, and your game will be ready to play the map that you just made. It takes a lot of practice to get comfortable with mapping, it really does. And like I said before, you may spend 15 hours on your first map, you may spend 50 hours on your first map. Keep mapping. Practice makes perfect. I guarantee you, even the top end mappers that have been doing this since day one, they're still learning stuff, they're still learning pattern variations. Some of them still take a ton of time on their own maps trying to get them perfect and the way they want them. Everyone started somewhere. Just be patient, and I promise you, you will end up making it if you just keep trying. Eventually you'll find your own mapping style. People will either love it or hate it. Trust me, not everyone will love your maps. I know there are people out there that hate my maps, that downvote them at any chance they get. It happens. You have to be able to take that constructive criticism. Anyways, if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to DM me on Discord. I'll leave my Discord tag in the description below. I will leave the links to the BSMG Discord and the Score Saber Discord, where you can feel free to post questions about your mapping in there as well. There are plenty of mappers and high-level players that are more than willing to help new mappers get their feet wet with mapping and get them on the right track to where they need to be. Anyways, if you liked the tutorial that I showed you here today, feel free to leave a like. And if you want to catch me live, maybe I'll be doing mapping or playing and I can playtest some of your maps for you. You can catch me at twitch.tv/Zenzoto. I'll leave the link to that in the description as well. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I appreciate you guys for taking the time to try to learn how to map. We always want to see new mappers, because seeing new mappers in the game is what keeps the game alive. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you next time.